Good morning, everyone. We're out here with my buddy Brennan Schuette of Mid-Sota Guide Service. We're up here in Minnesota. We're on Lake X. There's a million lakes up here. They all fish different, and we've never done a show up here in the summer, late summer now, I guess. He had a baby, so we had to delay it a little bit. Congratulations there.
Thank you.
And just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, what we're going to be trying.
So right now, we're kind of getting into that weird transition of late summer into fall. So these fish are still hanging on to these remaining green weed clumps. They haven't pushed out to the deep water yet or to the edges. So what we're going to be doing today is running along this break line and targeting with live scope any remaining green weed clumps, like curly leaf pondweed or coontail, anything like that. And we're just going to be pitching on top of that and trying to pull fish out of those weed clumps. So pitching hair jigs, pitching plastics, we're going to go get after them.
I'm excited. I've never done this before. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. There we go.
There you go, sir.
Choked it down. That is about as fun as it gets. Casting for black crappie. I've always loved it. It's something different out here. Casting these isolated weed clumps, watching it come over the top of the weeds, feeling it tick the weeds, and then wham, they come out and nail it. Big black crappie. This is fun. Love it, love it, love it. Man.
They fight different up here, don't they?
They do, they do.
Yeah, that one was nose hooked, so he's good.
Golly. So everybody knows Minnesota is the home of 10,000 lakes, and on the drive up here, we saw 20 and we saw 100 on the map. How do you narrow these down and guide on these and know which ones are good and which ones aren't, and find the time to figure them out and then pattern them?
So the biggest thing is, obviously just talking to other anglers, social media now is just a big thing to, chat with other people who are fishing different areas. But like when I'm up guiding and I want to find or add new lakes to my, guide arsenal, the biggest thing that Minnesota does is they do a lot of test net surveys, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's all public information. So say if I'm up, guiding in my region and it's like, okay, this year I have 3 days to kill to, break down a couple new lakes.
Yeah.
I can go on my Navionics on my phone. It's like, oh, I want to see what, this lake looks like, or, what's in the surveys for this lake. You go on Lake Finder Mobile and you type in that lake and it'll give you the date it was surveyed, exactly the size structure of panfish, walleyes, pike, bass, everything that they catch in their test nets. And so that's always a good indicator for me. It's like, okay, if that lake is going to be conducive for guiding, like, if there's 100, they have, they had the nets out for a day and they had 100 12-inch crappies in it. That, to me, that's going to be a good lake,
Yeah.
But then it all boils down to, what's the water clarity like? If it's super clear, it's not going to be the best lake to summer guide on. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, to pick those certain lakes I like to guide on.
Yeah, and having just a couple other good buddies that you can trust and other guides to network with.
Yeah.
People talk about, oh, it's like every good fisherman out there, they don't figure it all out on their own. They've got buddies, hey, have you been on this lake lately? Have you been on this end of this lake? And network and use each other and get feedback.
And the biggest thing too is, if you're working with other guides and stuff and, it's kind of a, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Yep. If you're struggling on one lake and, they give you just the tiniest bit of information that's going to help, your business or whatever.
Yep.
That's crucial, but then at the same time, when they're struggling, they reach out to you, you give that information back and help them out, so.
It works out.
Yeah, networking is, a huge, huge thing.
It's like anything. It works in life, just helping each other out.
Exactly.
Being a good person.
Exactly.
It's not just for fishing.
Right.
Right at the boat.
Just a baby.
Still wee lad. You know, sometimes I think you can do better when you're not looking at it.
100%.
Like I said, you're staring at it.
Yeah.
You're acting ignorant, and then you're also trying to feel. Just go back to old school and be like, I'm just gonna wait until I feel a fish bite. Okay, so something we've learned with live scope that we never got to see before is, you know, a real time of fish chasing your bait. And every lake and every day is different. Sometimes you slow down, sometimes you speed up, sometimes you twitch, pop. What do you typically do here in the weeds when, because I just had one, he hit it twice, chased it for 20 feet, and I never got him. Did I do something wrong, or what do you do down
You know, and like you said, you know, what you learn on live scope just by watching fish, you know, in correlation with the conditions. So like today it's kind of cloudy weather. I kind of thought today the fish would be a little bit slower. So you're gonna wanna let that bait just kind of slowly glide, drop it in front of them. You know, like you're just more so reeling that in, like, you know, like a minnow's just, you know, speeding away from it. When I see different types of conditions where fish kind of slow down and they're just a little more lethargic, I'll rock that bait kind of through the water column. I'll bring it up and then just let it, you know, glide in front of them. And typically when they are kind of slow like that, they'll hit it on the fall. They'll just come up and barely grab it. But like you said, it changes day to day. And what you learn on live scope doing that is just unbelievable.
Oh, it is, because you know he's a foot from, he's chasing, he's a foot from the bait. And then, you know, you can stop one time, and then if he flares and runs off, you know, well, don't do that again.
Yep.
You know, so it is crazy what you learn with this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, like this fish right here too. Look at that hook just barely in the paper. That is why we like to net them up here in Minnesota, because look at this. If you're to try and boat flip this fish, that's just gonna tear right out. Comes right out.
I really think it's neat fishing these isolated weed clumps and weed edges. I haven't fished a lot of it, you know, where I grew up and fished, and it's not weeds all over the country, and it's really neat. We're usually looking for wood, you know, in the lakes I fish, timber or stumps, and so there's not a lot of wood or cover in these lakes.
No, so like this is our structure, or we fish rock piles, you know, depending on how late in the fall we get. But when we're looking for, you know, mid-summer fish, generally, all depending on the water clarity, you know, the weeds will go down to maybe 15, 16 feet at the bottom edge, and that's where those crappies are gonna hang out at. Now today, the lake we're on, you know, the water is partially stained and the weeds have started to die off deep. So these fish have slid up on top of this flat off of deep, you know, the deep break line, and they're just staging in these remaining weed clumps, and you know, this is the structure that we fish, and this is what holds fish. And the reason these crappies are in here is because you can see on the screen there's flickers of, you know, bait balls here, you got minnows, little perch. They're chasing all that around. So that's why these fish are here. They have habitat, they have food, they have everything, and we're here plucking them out one after the other here.
What's interesting is it doesn't matter whether it's weeds, weed clumps, stumps, brush piles, rock piles. Always look for drops, edges, islands, any deep contour breaks, anything. You can get your mapping out, you know, like on this lake.
Yeah, we're adjacent to a couple deep holes just right off of this point that we're on, this flat that we're on.
Yeah.
So as, you know, now we progress towards fall, these fish are gonna go from these remaining weed clumps, they're gonna slide out to our basins, you know, that 30, 40 feet. And that's where they're gonna remain all winter long. And then as spring comes, they just slide right back up on here. Almost had a fish. And they just slide right back up on top of here, you know, as these weeds grow back in the spring and summer.
It's just, it almost gets simple the more you fish. You look at this mapping and go, well, you know, there's a hump that comes up to 8 feet, and on the other side of it, it drops off into 30. You just kind of know that's an area to check. It may not produce, but the next one may. You know, you don't try to fish, you know, a 40-acre flat. You find something different. Find a channel, find a hump, a drop, you know, anything. And then when you find your weed clumps next to that,
Yep.
or your brush pile or your rock pile or anything, it's probably gonna be a productive spot.
Yep, exactly.
It's all him.
Rocky.
Rocky Top, Tennessee.
All Belbows, size lake.
Swing 'em in. We got enough catches now, so.
Dude,
you know.
that's a donkey. That is a donkey.
Let's go. And then they broke it down. Oh, look at that right in the boat. That's a good one. So what do you like about these new 7-foot rods we designed?
So these 7-footers, you know, they're really conducive for the type of fishing I do. The crappies up here, when it gets to be late summer, they're not necessarily just coming up and crushing your bait. So you're reeling this bait back and they're hitting it on the fall. And then when you're reeling down this new 7-foot medium light, that tip loads up real good. And that's your bite detection. It's not that you're feeling the bite, it's you're seeing that rod tip load up.
Yeah.
And that's just something for, you know, that's really good for me up here, because these fish can just be so fickle. I mean, yet they're so aggressive, but they're just hitting it on the fall, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. We designed it for anyone, anywhere. Of course, you can use them on, you know, white crappie and muddy or stained water, but mainly, you know, there's so many people across the country fishing for these finicky black. We all know that the black crappie can just be on and off, and so, like you said, just barely touch the bait. And they also help the fish doesn't feel the resistance. You know, they can take time to
clamp
get the
down
bait
on
in their
that
mouth
bait.
good.
Yep.
And when you set the hook, you're not yanking it out of their mouth. And like you said, we just saw they're in the paper part of their mouth. If you set the hook with a stout rod on that, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
So it gives it a chance to load up. But
and then generally I like to pair this with mono just to give a little bit more stretch.
yeah.
You know, and I found, especially with guiding too, if I'm using braid, you know, you just have people that, you know, if I don't have the drag set perfect, you know, and those fish are hooked in the paper, I mean, they're just gonna pop out as soon as they come up to the surface, because it's just not forgiving enough.
Yeah. God, those things fight. Look at them thrashing around. Boom. Just popped out. Yeah, they do pop out right there in the... Hey, that's fun. Catching them on the shank. 1.75 up here in pretty clean water, and this bait is doing the job.
Stay out of the trolling motor. Of course. Oh, there it is. Crappie. Switched over to the shank. You can see how these fish right here, they're just getting hooked in the paper. So generally, what I like to do is net them, especially when I'm guiding. You just don't want to lose them. Yeah, beautiful fish.
Brennan Schuette. I didn't know you could come do this in Minnesota.
Oh, yes, you can.
We had our limits quick this morning. These are healthy, big black crappie that fight like crazy, and we're catching them in weed beds, and it's been so much fun. How do we get a hold of you?
So you can give me a call on my cell phone, 320-510-5072, or look up my guide service page, Facebook and Instagram at Mid-Sota Media and Guide Service. Got fall openings. I do year-round guide trips for ice fishing, open water fishing, and waterfowl hunts. So Minnesota's where it's at. We produce some healthy fish, and I'm so glad you guys were able to come up here and enjoy this with me.
We're definitely coming back and doing this again next year. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.